Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to another video and hope you guys are doing well. Today, this video I want to cover my heroic progression boss order list. I'm going to put like a little TLDR on screen for you now if you just want a reminder or a list of which bosses in which order. But I will be explaining why we're going to each boss and different things like that as we go through the video. So I hope you guys enjoy and thank you for watching. Bye! Now, the first boss that I'm going to be going to on day one of Heroic Raid release is actually Magmaw, and the reason for this is because, while it's not probably the easiest Heroic boss to be starting with, the loot that it drops is just so influential if you get lucky. It drops things like the Symbiotic Worm, which is an amazing mastery proc trinket for tanks. Give this to your Blood DK, who's going to be your main tank for the majority of the heroic bosses, and you can really feel a difference immediately in just how tanky he is. You've then also got a 372 strength weapon, which you can give to the likes of, again, your Blood DK, Arms Warriors, Ret Pallies, who are going to hate the fact that they farm Zinrock, but are also going to be doing a lot more damage. Halfus is probably one of my favourite fights of the tier and where we'll be going second in my heroic progress list. Now, the reason for this is because it can be a very hectic fight, but you can do things to change the way you handle the fight, such as 3-tanking, and you can really tone the difficulty to what your group wants to do. He also has a chance to drop a heroic chest tier piece, which can be amazing if you do manage to get that 3k Valor cap, as well as things like Malevolence and Essence of the Cyclone, major big pickup items that will help you with further progress bosses. Next up, we have the dragons, Valiona and Threlian. Now, naturally, the progression is you killed Halfus, you're going to go to the second boss, and it's a relatively easy boss that doesn't change much from normal. In fact, it only really changes for 1 or 2 people that have to handle the Nether phase, or the Twilight phase, whatever it's called. So, realistically, it doesn't get very difficult. It is going to be a little bit of a DPS check, the enrage time is a little bit tighter, and everything does a little bit more damage, but generally, it's not a particularly hard heroic progress boss. Next on the list is going to be Omnitron Defense System, and this is where you're going to have the first major decision of the heroic progress. This is a really tough boss and probably one of the more mechanically inclined, as well as having some DPS checks, of the entire phase. However, killing this, you have to kill this to actually progress to Chimaeron and Atramedes, Maloriak and Nefarian. So it is a boss you're going to want to choose early because Chimaeron and Atramedes are very easy heroic bosses that drop majorly good loot. So skipping this on, just killing it on normal just to get through, or progging this one early is my recommendation. Now, regardless of whether you chose to do Omnitron heroic or normal, you can still carry on with the rest of the bosses on heroic. So Chimaeron is going to be quite an easy boss. It is probably the first numbers check boss that you're going to experience of the phase, in that, you know, your tanks just have to be able to manage stacks and survive a couple of hits. Your healers have to know how to heal Chimaeron specifically, because it is a fight that doesn't work normally, like any other boss really. And DPS are going to have to be able to get through those phases, as well as burn that last 20% real quick. So it's probably a little bit more of a numbers boss than mechanics, but it is quite easy, and it does drop an insane strength trinket. After Chimaeron, I'd be heading to Atramedes. Atramedes has 2 major tactics that you can use. One involves 1 tanking, 2 heals, and just absolutely burning through the boss, using a lot of the gongs for actually the increased damage taken for the boss, rather than to avoid mechanics. The second mechanic, you know, relies on having 1 tank, maybe even 3 healers, and doing all the mechanics correctly and, you know, managing your gongs properly and things like that. It's going to be a lot longer of a fight, but you can do it more as a mechanical fight instead. You have 2 good tactics there, both can work for getting a kill. We personally are going to go for the heroic, just nuke and burn the boss. Now, Conclave of Wind is where we'll be going after Atramedes, and it's not a particularly difficult boss in terms of numbers. The amount of damage and healing and things you're going to have to do isn't actually insane to get through the checks. This is obviously post-nerf, pre-nerf it was actually a lot harder, but you're going to be able to just handle this really easily. It's an almost entirely mechanics fight, and you're going to have to plan around who's going to be staying on which platforms and who's going to handle certain responsibilities. Especially on 10 man, this can be quite a tough boss to assign responsibilities to. On 25 it is much easier. Next up we have Maloriak. Now, Maloriak is one of those bosses that gets a bad reputation for being a very difficult boss, but actually it's one of those bosses where it's all about mechanics. You could burn the boss very, very easily, get it to 30%, proc the last phase, get all the ads spawned, and it becomes a very messy fight. But actually, if you do the fight correctly, you allow Remedy just to keep him alive, you go through the phases, it's not a difficult fight. All Heroic does is add an extra phase into that rotation, so you have the black phase, and that's something that just slows the fight down even more, but as long as you handle the mechanics, it's actually not too bad of a boss. Ascendant Council is going to be your second major decision in your first week's heroic progress. And I say that because Ascendant Council offers one of the hardest bosses in the entirety of Tier 11, but it's also a boss that you have to kill to get access to Sinestra, which is the end hidden boss in Bastion of Twilight. So it's going to be one of those fights that, you know, it's going to take you a while to progress, I imagine. It's going to be quite a tough boss, but if you do want to get to Sinestra, then this is a boss you're going to have to go through. If you do choose to skip this and do it on normal, then you can still kill Cho'gall on heroic, you just won't be able to kill Sinestra on heroic. Again, similar to Omnitron, whether you choose to kill Ascendant Council on normal or heroic, Cho'gall you'll probably want to do on heroic, and while the fight doesn't change massively between normal and heroic, the difference is the enrage timer is much, much tighter, and you will need to start burning through and using some kind of cheese tactics to maximise your DPS. You can have things like Fire Mages and Ellie Shammies go and get corrupted, with Disc Priest keeping shields on them, so they're reducing the damage they take massively, while being able to do extra DPS. But generally, it's not too hard of a fight, as long as you can get that cheesy DPS in. Finally, then you have the remaining three bosses: Sinestra, Alakir, and Nefarian. Now, if I could choose of the three bosses, I would probably do Alakir, then Sinestra, then Nefarian. Obviously, Sinestra depends heavily on whether you killed Ascendant Council on heroic as well, and obviously you've cleared all the other bosses on heroic. But generally, if you have got access to Sinestra, I would say of the three, he's probably the middle tier difficulty. Alakir is currently bugged on the beta, making it extremely hard to test his difficulty in general, and making him almost unkillable currently. And Nefarian is probably the hardest heroic boss of the tier. So generally it's going to be between those three, whichever you want to go to. There's not going to be massive difference between them. So yeah, take it as you want to with those. Obviously, this is just my list. If you guys want to do things in different order, please do. This does revolve around a lot of jumping in and out of different raids. But generally, I think this is kind of the best list, where you're going to be picking up the most gear from the easiest bosses to progress into the harder bosses. Let me know what you guys think of this, whether that's helped you at all, how you get on with your heroic progress, if you've done any beta testing, all that good stuff. I would love to know. Thank you for watching, and peace.